I got halfway through this video when I realised that you'll need to have a rough idea of what the substance is about before we start diving into these themes. See the movie for yourself if you'd like to get every scene delivered to you chronologically, but I'll just quickly explain the premise, and if you prefer, you can use the chapter select to skip to the meat of this video. The substance is about 50-year-old celebrity Elizabeth Lizzie Sparkle, who is thrust out of her career on her birthday to be replaced with someone newer and hotter. Lizzie hears about a mysterious procedure called the substance, and after some deliberation decides to sign up. Obviously, since this is 2024, it's a subscription service. The substance creates a younger, better version of Lizzie who she calls Sue, because you can't spell substance without Sue, and B-S-T-A-N and C, which spells bestank. The one catch? Both cannot be conscious at the same time. There's 7 days on, 7 days off, alternating Sue and Elizabeth. One of them lies unconscious on the bathroom floor for a week while the other one lives, and then they swap. Sue needs daily stabilizers or she falls apart, but that's a standard step of any skincare routine. I don't need to explain that to you. Sue tries out for Lizzie's part and finds herself a hypersexualized cog in a new machine, but a hypersexualized cog that comes with a lot of attention and success. Opportunities throw themselves at Sue and she takes them enthusiastically. She's offered to host the New Year's Eve show. Sue begins to steal time from Elizabeth, causing Elizabeth to age drastically. Upset by her double's piss-taking and with decades stolen, Elizabeth tries to terminate Sue by injecting her with a syringe of black liquid, but rethinks it at the last second. Sue wakes up and beats Elizabeth to death, only this destroys her source of stabilizer fluid and she begins to crumble at the New Year's Eve show. In a desperate bid for rejuvenation, even if she can't be there to see it, Sue attempts to use the substance on herself, a clone, and it creates a monster the movie labels as Monstro Eliza Sue. Eliza Sue shows up, causes a ruckus, and sprays blood everywhere. When she collapses on the sidewalk, she explodes, and out crawls the last vestige of Elizabeth, who drags herself to her Walk of Fame star and dies, hallucinating glitter and a spotlight and applause. This movie covers a lot of concepts, there's a lot of themes here, and you can put 5 viewers in a room, and although there is certainly a set message, each one will walk out with a different idea of what exactly the substance was trying to say, based on their own experiences and attitudes. The substance points a lot of fingers outwards and inwards, and the movie is crammed full of layers to be dissected. If you're like me, you'll appreciate your fiction jam-packed with details, which is why I'd like to recommend to you How to Rebuild Civilization. How to Rebuild Civilization is a unique encyclopedic book, not just because it's chock full of bespoke illustrations and really interesting concepts all about how civilization is built, but because it contains a real-life ARG-style treasure hunt. Yes, this book is an augmented reality game, featuring entry-level puzzles that lead to a secret website and advanced difficult puzzles. Only 7 people in the world have solved this so far. If you solve the quest, you get a special reward from publisher Hungry Minds, and become an honorary member of the Order of Seekers. It will probably give you and the family something to do after Christmas dinner as well. How to Rebuild Civilization blends history, science, art, and design to deliver rare knowledge and inspire deeper thinking. The hardcover is gorgeous, and these illustrations aren't just on any old paper, they're like matte art paper, the kind of paper I feel like I need to wash my hands before touching so I don't ruin it. I love the big double spread illustrations. They're so detailed that you could get lost in them for hours, like the boats and buoyancy spread. If I had this book as a kid, it would have been my Bible. With a budget of over $2 million raised across Indiegogo and Kickstarter, How to Rebuild Civilization was produced through the efforts of over 50 creative professionals, and consequently was a 2023 bestseller. And also remember that this book was made in 2021, which was before the advent of generative AI, and it all checks out for me as far as I'm concerned. It looks good, it looks legit, and it looks like it was made with real love and care. If you're interested in grabbing one of these for yourself, or as a discerning gift for the holidays, check out the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen now to visit. Use the code K10 for 10% off. That's KAY10, and thank you to Hungry Minds for sponsoring today's video. As a kind of body horror sci-fi, the substance predicates itself on the concept of a monkey's paw cure-all injection. The substance, like the actual substance for which the movie is named, is the least trustworthy injectable I've ever seen. The substance is marketed with confidence. The speaker on the promo video talks like he's the voice of God. All associated material is delivered in huge block capitals. In a world of clean graphic design, this exudes power. In reality, it's an unlicensed injectable cosmetic procedure procedure. To get it, you have to be referred by someone already using it and then call an exclusive number. The man on the other end of the line provides no information, basically saying, do you want this or not? The marketing is intentionally opaque. You're offered a newer, younger version of yourself, which in our world is cosmetic marketing language for, do you want an 85 quid cream that may very slightly change your face in very small ways? We don't really have cloning for the purposes of prolonging our careers, and a lot of people come away from this movie with the question of, why did Elizabeth take the substance if she wouldn't see the rewards from it directly? But I think that Elizabeth had absolutely no idea that taking an injection of green liquid would clone her. I think she literally thought it would turn her into a younger, better version of herself. What I like about Elizabeth's character is that she is a victim, but her victimhood doesn't make her a hero. We aren't shown the decades the industry has spent warping her, burrowing into her self-esteem like termites. It would take a truly insecure, vulnerable person to buy into the substance, to make that fateful decision to inject mystery fluid alone in the bathroom. It's not her fault that she is like this. She is a product of the industry. So the tragedy is in seeing her fall victim to another source of exploitation. She was exploited for her youth by Hollywood, and now she is exploited for her age by the field of cosmetic surgery. The package only contains 3 lines of instruction and no medical insert, which serves 2 purposes. Firstly, it looks mint. It's an aesthetic choice done to make the substance look sci-fi and cool, and it works well alongside the other title cards and graphic design in the movie itself. Secondly, it serves the in-universe purpose of sugarcoating the shadiest, most dangerous thing one can do: subscribe to an unverified mystery substance sold by a faceless man in a dodgy back alley, go into your apartment alone, and without telling anyone, inject it directly into your veins. We trust it because it looks authoritative. I think this plays well on the concept of illegal cosmetic procedures, including surgery, fillers, and Botox injections done in unsanitary conditions by unlicensed practitioners, preying on those desperate for some miracle injection of youth, and often suffering horrific consequences. This was only cracked down on in August of this year in the UK, with new measures demanding clinics administering fillers and Botox now need to be licensed, which they did not have to be before. Healthcare professionals must now be suitably qualified to deliver high-risk procedures like Brazilian butt lifts, which is the most dangerous cosmetic procedure with a death rate of 1 in 4,000 patients, as injected fat can enter blood vessels, travel to the heart or lungs, obstruct blood flow, and cause fat embolisms. So yeah, suitably qualified would be nice. The substance emphasizes the often downplayed deadliness of cosmetic procedures, which people are often surprised to hear are as deadly as they are. The pickup point is filled with lockers, but only 2 of them have numbers on. We have number 207 and we have number 503, Elizabeth's number. This indicates that lockers get a number when there's an active subscription, and that there are only 2 active subscriptions. The other subscription, as we learn, is the subscription of the nurse that recruited Elizabeth into the substance in the first place. The substance is so secretive and the world of Hollywood is so competitive that it's easy for Lizzie and the viewer to assume that everyone is using it, that it's a way to tread water in a world where standards are raised further than you can hope to meet them. But in reality, there are 2 customers, Elizabeth and the nurse who scouted her. It emphasizes this seedy arrangement dressed up in a beb-ass, bold-ass font situation Elizabeth has gotten into, injecting herself with green fluid because the room she collected it from was well lit and clean and clinical. It also gives pyramid scheme vibes, where money is made primarily by recruiting other people, often recruiting vulnerable individuals, hoping that this will be their ticket to riches. The nurse may have gotten commission for recruiting Lizzie. Inside Lizzie's welcome package is the single-use activator bottle. She also has something called a stabilizer, a food matrix, and food other self, which have instructions like stabilize daily and switch every 7 days, which are simple but unclear. They are totally unexplained. Once Elizabeth has injected the activator, we see a long cloning process. It looks like agony. She writhes nakedly on the bathroom floor and screams as her back splits open. After a trippy light sequence ending in a heart of fire spreading out across a black background, Elizabeth's clone is born. It's not specified like 15-minute speech anime exposition style how this works. Some believe that Elizabeth and Sue are one person who share memories that are passed between them every 7 days when they switch. I don't agree, but I don't believe they are perfect clones either. Like, Elizabeth has green eyes and Sue has blue eyes, and we can see in pictures of Elizabeth that she did not look like Sue when she was younger. I think that Sue is a different body. Maybe the substance gets the old Punnett square out and picks more conventionally attractive genes. I don't know. But I definitely think they share memories to the point where they both think that they are the original. Sue thinks that her consciousness has been moved into a new body, and that Elizabeth is now some empty, piloted other, and Elizabeth thinks that she has spawned something that will carry the torch for them both. Initially, Sue sits next to Elizabeth with her head bowed, like in prayer, but this reverence soon evaporates. The fact that only one of them can be conscious at once means they're always separate from one another. They can't see that they're both individuals, so they come to resent each other. My favourite aspect of this cosmetic surgery theme is the way Sue acknowledges her beauty. There's this segment later where Sue features on a talk show. She is asked, "What's one of your beauty secrets?" Sue struggles for answers for a while before answering, "I just try to be grateful, sincere, and to lead from my heart," which is not a beauty secret. I feel like this is mocking celebrities that deny cosmetic procedures, like the Kardashians. Kylie Jenner in particular is like a year younger than me, I think, and when she got 1,000,000 operations as a teenager and insisted it was just puberty, I remember being quite sad and self-conscious. Like, I felt like I had missed out on something that she had presented as a very passive experience of growing up. This once-in-a-lifetime alignment of beauty planets that just hadn't favoured me. Only realising, like, as I got older that she had spent millions on illegal cosmetic procedures because she was underage when she had them. And we have celebrities denying nose jobs and boob jobs, influencers selling flat tummy tea and waist trainers to profit off liposuction, secret buccal fat removal surgeries delivering results that are impossible with conventional weight loss. Sue reminds me of that cosmetic exclusivity that celebrity culture seems to champion, this reluctance to admit that money and looks are often connected, that weird contradiction where bought beauty is lesser than natural beauty, therefore you need to smuggle bought beauty as natural beauty. To suggest that you can pay your way into world-famous looks implies that world fame isn't a God-given talent. Sue sets false goals for people who want to look like her, not realising that the actual answer is be personally invited to a seedy experimental treatment program reserved for the 0.01%. The exploitation of women isn't an uncommon trope, but it's rare for movies to cover topics like the experience of aging women, especially in a way that's so human. Lizzie Sparkle makes mistakes, she's twisted by her life in the spotlight. She's not the perfect victim, but she is a victim. Everyone already knows that Hollywood is a snake's den. Only a few make it, usually those already connected, and everyone else is sucked dry, working menial jobs and paying astronomical rents in a bid to find success in a hostile and finicky world. Most stories about Hollywood focus on the loss of innocence involved in shooting for the stars and finding yourself blasted into the void of space, left to float helpless and alone in a world less star-studded than it appeared. The Substance provides a unique lens for this kind of story because innocence is already lost. We never see how Elizabeth made it into the industry. This is her getting spat out of the other end. Elizabeth's rise to fame isn't entirely excluded from the movie. It's represented as the construction and lifespan of her Walk of Fame star, which occurs in a montage at the beginning of the film. We see the name Elizabeth Sparkle emblazoned on the star. Elizabeth twirls on it amidst paparazzi and cheering fans, and then a time-lapse begins. Fans take photos with it, then only older fans are taking photos of it, then people are walking by, then the star cracks, gets old, and then someone drops a burger on it. After a promising rise to fame, Elizabeth caught the wind and coasted on daytime TV, doing aerobics programs and probably like presenting gigs, never quite launching a full Hollywood acting career, but making great money, earning loads of awards, and having far more than 15 minutes of fame. She's been in the game for 30 years, easy. As Elizabeth leaves the studio, she wanders along a long, red, shining-esque corridor. Similar to the star, this corridor represents her career. It's lined with huge prints of magazine covers she's done across the years. As she walks along it, she walks through her life, her younger versions watching from the walls. The crucial part of this memory lane is its end. At the end of her timeline, Elizabeth comes to the bathroom to find the women's toilets are out of order. She uses the men's. This is obviously intentional. At 50, there is no physical space for a woman left. Men only from here on out. Stepping into this male space has disastrous consequences as this exposes Elizabeth to what is often excused as locker room talk, i.e. the kind of thing chauvinists say about women when they know they're in an environment where they won't be penalised. Harvey, the TV show executive responsible for Elizabeth's Sparkle Your Life aerobics show, storms into the bathroom to pee whilst talking on the phone. Elizabeth, hiding in the stall, overhears him call her an old bitch, Oscar winner my ass, snapping, "I don't give a fuck what we promised her, this isn't a charity." Elizabeth, trapped by social convention, is forced to listen to Harvey explain that they want someone younger to replace her. As Harvey blusters out of the bathroom, he recites down the phone, "Did you know women's fertility begins to decrease at age 25? How old is your wife? You better get busy." The saddest part of this is that Elizabeth comes out and still washes her hands. The theme of aging women opens the doors for the examination of other topics. The other side of this coin is missing your youth. Elizabeth lives in an enormous apartment in Los Angeles with a view of the entire city, and a massive portrait on the wall of herself, at her current age, looking glamorous. Yet the note accompanying the flowers on her table is written in the past tense. You were. The shot lingers like the word lingers in her mind. Elizabeth goes from is to was in the space of a day, and that has to be traumatic. I think that the rush of this prologue is effective in emphasizing this feeling too. Elizabeth Sparkle is Elizabeth Sparkle for what? 3 minutes of a 2-hour, 20-minute movie? It mimics the way your past feels. Days are long, but years are short, and in the blink of an eye, you've lived 30 years. The way Elizabeth's life is rushed past us perfectly suits that blink and you miss it feeling. The nurse who recruits Elizabeth does so by slipping a USB into her pocket. She listens to a spiel that is designed to appeal specifically to her. The advert asks, although I'll paraphrase it to condense it, "Have you ever dreamed of a better version of yourself? Younger, more perfect? One single injection can create another version of yourself. Everything comes from you and everything is you. You are one." The questions posed by this advert are so bold, so aren't you sick of being less than, that even Elizabeth Sparkle doesn't buy into it. She bins it and goes to the bar. There's this shot of her with an open back dress, and I like this moment for 2 reasons. Firstly, because it is a shot mimicked twice in the film, when she is sitting on the edge of the hospital bed after the car crash, and when she is sitting on the edge of her bed at home after blowing off a date with enraptured schoolmate Fred. It represents a moment where she is at her lowest, when she sees herself as totally without value. Secondly, because overhead lighting sucks. If there's even a rumple on your skin, even a smidge of cellulite, even a bump of muscle, it is about to be broadcast to the entire room. Why do they have it in changing rooms? Overhead lighting has ruined my day before, and why should I care? Most people have cellulite, but I do care, and most people care. And I find it interesting that Elizabeth is the kind of person who would care about it, but hasn't noticed it, because it's on her back. There are moments in this movie where she is so ashamed of how she looks that she won't even leave her house, because she has such severe body dysmorphia that she thinks people will find her revolting. Every time we get a shot of her walking through LA, we see the harsh light of the sun beyond the row of watching palm trees. The camera is right up to her face, right on her shoulder. It's claustrophobic, it's aggressive. These moments are filmed with shaky cam that worsens depending on Elizabeth's mental state. In the background we hear sirens, dogs barking, cars beeping. People walking by are obscured. Elizabeth wraps her coat around herself in the summer LA heat so that no one can see her body. She even wears gloves. The martinis get revenge and Elizabeth staggers home to throw up. We see the juxtaposition of her smiling face in her portrait and her makeup-stained, drunk, self-loathing face in the mirror. The camera drifts over all her awards. Elizabeth picks up an old snow globe, an award from early in her career, and she pings it off her portrait. It shatters the glass over her eye, a physical metaphor for the first cracks appearing in her psyche. With her face cloaked in shadow, she calls the number 4 the substance. Our next theme to explore is the cutthroat nature of Hollywood. Firstly, I think this movie shines an interesting light on the concept of nepotism through the use of Elizabeth's younger self. Nepotism is entrenched in Hollywood. The thing is, you have stars who a lot of people don't realise are nepotism hires, like Zooey Deschanel and Jamie Lee Curtis. You also have very famous nepotism hires, like Ray Nicholson, son of Jack Nicholson, who seems to have been hired purely off the back of his ability to mimic his father's Kubrick stare. We also have Lily Rose Depp, who, fair play to her, is actually pretty good, but obviously managed to get a leg up into the industry off the back of her father's name, her first role ever being in Tusk alongside her father when she was 15 years old. Both Jamie Lee Curtis and Lily Rose Depp regard acting as something they had no plans to get into. There's an interesting meta angle to this story, because as far as I can find, Demi Moore rose to stardom through modelling. Her parents were not in the entertainment industry, so not a nepo hire. Margaret Qualley, however, was a nepo baby, because she's the daughter of Andy McDowell. I wonder if this casting was intentional, since Sue and Elizabeth's relationship feels like an allegory for nepotism. Elizabeth's grisly, painful birthing of Sue, a younger, better version of herself, containing Elizabeth's memories and skill set, allows Elizabeth to live vicariously through her cloned daughter. There are parallels to pageant mums here. Elizabeth has no foothold in the world of acting anymore, so creates a younger version of herself to go and live the life she wants to keep living, but I think nepotism stuck out to me just as much, if not more. Sue, possessing Elizabeth's memories and skills, knows exactly what Harvey and the other suits down at the TV station want. When she sees tryouts for the new Elizabeth Sparkle, she may not know them personally, but she knows what to wear, how to speak, and how to dance. She has insider knowledge. In the same talk show where she is asked for her beauty secrets, Sue pretends to be a small-town girl from Indiana and denies any connection to Lizzie Sparkle, since even saying, "Oh yeah, I know her," would diminish her talent, and, as with the cosmetic procedure secrecy, imply that her sudden shot into stardom wasn't solely the result of her God-given talent. In the substance, the ruthless nature of Hollywood is represented by Harvey, a repulsive, arrogant media executive who bins Elizabeth off. He does so having invited Elizabeth to a restaurant where he chows down on shrimps like a dog with a bag of hot chips. The juices and shells are just thrown around, littering the table like the bodies of countless women he's tossed about as he fed on them. He's gluttonous, he lacks self-awareness as he turns to peer up the skirt of a waitress. He is never held accountable. Harvey states, "We have to give the people what they want, and people want what the shareholders want." Harvey talks a lot about the people, and obviously an audience isn't going to want what is most profitable for some suits at the top of the ladder. He blows Elizabeth off to speak to some guy called George, leaving a table covered in mess, a fly drowning in a glass of wine, and a miserable Elizabeth. Elizabeth is broken by this heartless display. As she drives home in a stupor, she sees that billboards featuring her are already being torn down, cast aside. Hollywood strives to erase her immediately. Harvey doesn't temper this attitude for anyone, even Sue. When introducing Sue to his assistant, he forgets his assistant's name. "Isabella," she offers. Harvey finds that offensive. Who's got time to say that? He scoffs in front of a stunned Sue. "From now on, you're Cindy. It's shorter, it's better." This woman is 2 syllables too many, and a nickname like Izzy or is off the table for Harvey, who doesn't so much seek to make communication more efficient as he does to strip away and replace the identity of every woman in his employ. Harvey knows that he'll be able to replace Sue if he icks her out, no matter how much he reassures her that she is perfect. She skates a fine line with the unthinkable scheduling demand of, "I have to take every other week off," and for a moment we see his smile vanish, but for whatever reason he decides to honour it. "We'll work around it," Harvey assures her. "Gorgeous with a pure heart. People will love that." He doesn't mean gorgeous with a pure heart, he means has a huge bum and a tiny waist, and her pure heart is her innocent smile and laugh, which will be the centre of her sexualization. Harvey is by no means a coincidental choice for his name. Sue's sexualization is something I have mixed feelings about. The substance is a dark satire. Harvey is obviously a satirical take on TV executives. The excessive sexualization of Sue's Pump It Up aerobics program is satire, and the ending is definitely intended to be satirical. That said, I think they're satirical because they're obviously taking the piss. A huge swathe of this movie is played pretty straight because this movie is also sci-fi body horror, and that genre demands quieter moments so that the contrast can be clearer. The thing is, this movie ogles Margaret Qualley a lot. I can understand that in moments like her LA walk, which is bathed in warm light and pastel colours, delivered in smooth slow motion with low-angle shots intended to catch a nice slip of thigh under her skirt. It's obviously supposed to come off like an advert, as Sue is now another commodity to be sold. Yet we have tons of voyeuristic shots inside Sue and Elizabeth's house. Both women have to be totally naked to switch every week, meaning there's always at least one naked body lying on the floor of that bathroom, and later the closet they construct, and they fall naked on each other a lot. There's a lot of that. There's also a lot of shower scenes. While Elizabeth's shower scenes are uncomfortable, demonstrating the shattering of her mental state, Sue's shower scenes just involve her, like, caressing herself sensually. I feel like this was intended to highlight their differences, but it's also a bit excessive. Sue walks around the apartment in skimpy clothing. The camera is obsessed with Margaret's ass, and while I can appreciate what, it's a nice bum, congratulations, congratulations, madam. I don't really understand why this is satire. It's obviously satire when she is hip-thrusting the camera during filming, but in her private home? Are we not just doing the thing now? Still, let's focus on some of the satirization that I really appreciated, namely the way they satirize the sexualization of youth and innocence. Sue is a walking, talking sex doll. After stabilizing for the first time by injecting fluid taken from Elizabeth's spine, Sue does yoga on the floor of the apartment. With her back to the cracked portrait of Elizabeth, she does a perfect split and begins doing her stretches, like kinda eerie with it. Strange music plays, giving the impression of mechanical motion, like she's an automaton. Sue shows up to the casting call wearing a pastel pink and revealing bodysuit. She follows on from another young woman who the casting agent remarked was a good dancer, but she should have those boobs in the middle of her face instead of that nose. The way Sue stands in this scene is identical to the mannequin that she just bought the bodysuit off, highlighting her new role as object in this hierarchy. When Sue arrives, the agents remark that it looks like everything's in the right place now, delineating an exact expectation for how a woman's body should look. This is heard by Sue. We know this because it echoes in her head later in the film, clearly something she holds very dear despite its objectification. Sue's sex appeal winning her the role is an open secret. Harvey says things like gorgeous little angel and beautiful and happy, like those are the words he says out loud, but we are shown that she is selected for her body. He walks into his office where Sue is watching a close-up of her own lips on many screens, bringing with him 3 random dudes. Sue bites her lip at him, looking doe-eyed. I would expect Sue to simmer with resentment, or hey, audition somewhere else. But again, Elizabeth's victimhood does not make her a perfect person. She cares so much about her own fame that it overrides his treatment of her once she is looking through Sue's eyes. I think Sue sucks up to Harvey because her insecurity outweighs her self-respect. I don't think she really hates him at all. I think she has a short memory, and as long as she is feeling attention on her, then that's all she cares about. It doesn't matter who it's from, only that it's there. Sue asks no questions and raises no issues. Elizabeth was addicted to fame. Despite having probably 30 solid years of her career, she uses this opportunity to just carry on. She doesn't plan any contingencies for if this happens again. She makes no new contacts. She looks for no new jobs. She goes straight back to working under Harvey. Surely this can't happen twice, right? Sparkle Your Life with Elizabeth's replacement was not just personnel based. Sparkle Your Life is now the softcore Pump It Up, no longer aimed at older women. It reminds me of that Call on Me music video where dancing and bodysuits serve more as a vessel to watch women hip thrust in skimpy outfits than it is to get your cardio. Unlike in Sparkle Your Life, where Elizabeth narrated the exercises as they went and shouted encouragement to her viewers, Pump It Up features 0 vocals, emphasizing the visual element of this show. She only speaks at the end of the show when she says goodbye to the viewers.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you next week.
She says this in this girlishly innocent, wide-eyed way. Sue is marketed on having a sexual, womanly body, but made to play a childish character. I don't think I need to say why. Sue arrives on set to record Pump It Up and finds it empty. Some technician dude tells her to speak to Harvey right now, no time to get changed, forcing her to rush to his office dressed in a skimpy bodysuit. In the office is Harvey and more nameless, silent suits. Her outfit looks great on the set of Pump It Up, but infantilizes her in a corporate office. She becomes extra vulnerable. The separation between Sue and shareholder has been erased. This is the purest, unfiltered version of her place within this cruel world of television. Only as she learns, with tears in her eyes, Pump It Up is performing so well that she'll be asked to host the New Year's Eve show this year. Congratulations! As much as my heart bleeds for Elizabeth Sparkle, she is fully complicit with the world of Hollywood across her story. Even when shoved out of it, her only wish is to get back in. When she is in it, either as Sue or Lizzie Sparkle, she contributes to it. Even during the filming of Sparkle Your Life, she shouts things out that fat shame her viewers who lack the access to circumstances like hers. She has cosmetic treatments and access to personal chefs and does dance for a living, but still calls her audience jellyfish. Elizabeth's attitudes have likely come from the attitude she is expected to adhere to as a woman in Hollywood. This contradictory perspective that one shouldn't have to watch fat women exercise, but fat women should be shamed for exercising. You must do it in secret, but because they're fat, that means it's open season to shame them for being fat. Eating a salad is performative. She's obviously pounding 10 Big Macs on the drive home. Mocked for being fat, mocked for trying. Elizabeth is a slim woman and she profits off punching down, victim or not. She is also a groomed, brainwashed part of the problem, and she is a victim. Whilst driving home from her firing, Lizzie Sparkle spies a billboard with her face on it being torn down. The shock distracts her on the road and she is T-boned by another vehicle. We see her in the hospital next, hunched over the bed. Her spine is exposed to us, the angle and lighting of the room creating this bestial impression. She looks like Sadako in this cold light, her black hair hanging limply around her neck. Obviously traumatized by the car accident, Elizabeth is still reflecting on Harvey's words. The doctor, seeing this, starts telling Elizabeth about what a big fan his wife is of her show. Despite her silent grief, he brightly wishes her a happy birthday and then just bails when she bursts into tears. Her emotions make him, a doctor, uncomfortable. How many women does he talk to like this? Left alone with Nurse, Elizabeth becomes uncomfortable when she is told he needs to perform one more exam. She protests, "The doctor said I could go," and without saying a word, the nurse rips the back of her gown further open.
I thought he said I was good to go.
She does this lurch forward, the camera capturing her stunned gaze. It says, "Is he about to assault me?" This horrified disbelief as her body freezes. It's a really evocative moment of impending violation. Instead, he uses his thingy and squishes her spine and stuff. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. Tells her she's a good candidate, slips the substance USB into her coat pocket and leaves. Elizabeth is surrounded by men who want to use her for profit. She has no friends and no romantic connections, which is stunning considering she's a beautiful woman. Maybe she was too focused on her career, or maybe a partner wasn't able to fulfill her constant need for attention, adoration, and fame, or maybe she didn't consider herself worthy of a partner. Fred is an old schoolmate, allegedly. Elizabeth doesn't recognize him and only pretends to so as not to hurt his feelings. He is speechless with excitement when he accidentally bumps into her outside the hospital. I don't know what Fred's deal is. Some have suggested that he makes the substance, hence their serendipitous meeting. Some have suggested that he would be perfect for Elizabeth, able to dote on her like a goddess. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't think Fred is nefarious, I don't think his heart's in the wrong place, but I also don't think they'd have been able to make a good match.
Fred! Of course.
You haven't changed a bit. You're still the most beautiful girl in the whole wide world.
Fred has Elizabeth on a pedestal from the beginning, which will impact a relationship negatively, and Elizabeth is not in the space mentally to see Fred as anything except an adoration vending machine. Hey, you know what, maybe actually they'd be perfect for each other, but in a really toxic way. Eventually, Fred's idolization would become an issue for Elizabeth, or eventually Elizabeth's neediness would be too much for him to bear. Either way, Elizabeth definitely isn't in the headspace for romantic connection right now. He invites her for a drink and she's not interested, but offers to take his card to be polite. He rips a shred off his medical results, writes his phone number on it, drops it in a puddle, and then hands her the soaking wet, muddy scrap of paper with the number on it. Great start. Elizabeth forgets about Fred for a long time until one particularly low self-esteem day. Sue, by this point having thoroughly colonized Elizabeth's life and home, has thrown all of her old purses into some closet at the end of a long hallway, out of sight and mind. They're labelled Old Junk Elizabeth. It's here that Elizabeth finds Fred's number. She calls Fred for the wrong reasons. She wants to use him to feel better about herself. She invites him for a drink and he books them a table at Luigi's at 8 PM, but Elizabeth never makes it. Elizabeth can't leave her apartment because she keeps catching the eye of Billboard Sue, who is now planted firmly just outside her window. "How dare you think you deserve this?" the billboard seems to ask, emphasizing the way that having a younger, better version of yourself running around isn't actually going to fix the problems you're trying to fix. Elizabeth sees her own reflection in the doorknob, warped by the shape. She messes with her hair and makeup in the bathroom, becoming neurotic with stress as time ticks on. She adds blush and gloss, concealer, a scarf, more blush. She looks gorgeous, but she hates herself, and having Sue around has only made this self-hatred worse. She takes her makeup off by smearing it painfully across her skin, glaring at herself in the mirror for failing to conform to her own impossible standards. We cut to her sitting on the side of her bed, hunched over. Her face is emotionless, like when she was on the side of the hospital bed. Messages from Fred come in asking if she's okay. In the next shot, she takes quiche out of the fridge, and that's that for Fred. Elizabeth injects the substance for the first time in the bathroom naked. She runs her hands over the blemishes on her stomach. Despite having a perfect body by Hollywood standards, Elizabeth only sees the flaws. A tale as old as time. Sue's arrival is done in her point of view. I think this is to represent that Elizabeth has cloned herself and thinks that she has transferred her consciousness, not copied it. Sue wipes the fog off the mirror to look at her face, the yellow flare of the substance in her eyes. She wipes down the mirror so that she can behold her new body, which she is impressed with. Her relationship with Elizabeth begins as one of grateful reverence. She sews Elizabeth's spine back up with thick thread, giving the impression of a corset back or a skin suit, and then sits by her, head bowed and hands clasped as though in prayer. This is the best their relationship will ever be, because the substance is about to introduce another theme: competition between women in the industry. Elizabeth is probably quite disappointed that this is a cloning situation. She now has a younger, hotter version of herself, but she is still kept several degrees of separation from what she wanted, i.e. the continuation of her fame. Still, Sue's fame is her fame, and Elizabeth is insecure enough to devote herself to her doppelganger. We see her crossing off the days until she can be Sue again, filling Sue's days with Sue, Sue, Sue in block capitals, like the only plan for the day is just to be Sue. When she isn't Sue, she watches TV and waits to be Sue again. Sue finds herself in a situation so favourable that now in a position of power and happiness, she loses her empathy for the woman she was days ago. Getting everything she wants clouds her ability to care about her counterpart. She sees Elizabeth as some parasite who steals her days, wasting time that Sue could be using. Sue thinks she barely gets any time to enjoy herself. Sue believes her days to be more valuable. It never occurs to her that her counterpart would agree and is struggling to adapt. Sue's new position allows her to have whatever attitude she wants. Sue's life is illustrated in pastel colours, bloomed like an oblivion screenshot. She exudes confidence. Elizabeth lost her innocence and youth to Hollywood, but that's what Hollywood values, and that's why the innocence and youthful Sue is beloved. We see her sleeping on silken sheets, staring meaningfully at the audience. At first, she does this in soft pastel pinks. As she begins to care less and less for her source of stabilizer fluid, Elizabeth, and becomes more corrupted by the industry that is currently taking everything it can get from her, her clothes become darker. Eventually, she throws herself on the bed in pure black. Sue's resentment of Elizabeth begins as disapproval. After her first week off, Sue returns to the apartment to find a dent in the chair where Elizabeth sat for her entire 7 days. Sue seems to pity this. Elizabeth slowly becomes a source of shame for Sue as she begins to build her own life. Sue takes Elizabeth's portrait and hides it, her billboard observing smugly from outside in. Elizabeth does not have the self-esteem to take it back out of storage. Sue scrounges the house for a hollow wall and then creates a secret and strangely massive cupboard behind it, where she can store Elizabeth. Now that her mum isn't unconscious on the bathroom floor, Sue can have her friends visit whenever she wants. When Sue is invited to host the New Year's Eve show, she begins taking from Elizabeth for weeks at a time, aging her drastically. Soon, Elizabeth is looking like a hearty 70, I'd say. 20 years gone in the blink of an eye, 20 years she could have used for herself, have now been wasted on someone who doesn't respect her.
If you don't open the door when opportunity knocks, you won't get another chance. Just one more day, and then I have a whole week off, and we can switch.
We're doing the cover of Vogue.
Funny how it's we when you know you're crossing a line, Sue. The stabilizer extraction site in Elizabeth's lower back becomes black and full of pus, all infected, reflecting the rot of their supposedly mutual relationship. Elizabeth's posters are taken down from the corridor outside the studio. Sue finds them replaced with one, hers, the Pump It Up poster, the start of her own timeline. Sue does not seem to appreciate that she is walking down the exact same path again, and best case scenario, it will end in exactly the same way. Elizabeth begins to skirt this line between taking pride in living vicariously through Sue and feeling threatened by her. The billboard outside the window takes on an antagonistic vibe immediately. It's clear that Elizabeth feels judged by Sue's gaze, whilst also believing Sue to be the most likeable part of her. Elizabeth's sense of self is not helped at all by the company providing the substance, who play on her feelings of inadequacy to stop her from cancelling her service. After Sue's first major piss take, the piss take that leaves Elizabeth considerably aged, Elizabeth decides to call the substance hotline. She is told what has been used on one side is lost on the other. There's no going back, and to respect the balance, and things like this won't happen. Remember, this cosmetic procedure has no medical insert, no warnings, no information. Elizabeth had no way of knowing that using the substance could result in a situation like this, but the company lays all of the blame for Sue's behaviour and the adverse consequences of the substance at Elizabeth's feet. As a consumer, she is expected to have total foresight of the situation and to have every possibility under control. Elizabeth makes multiple calls as the situation worsens. The voice on the phone does offer to let her stop, but says you can end the experience and be you alone, emphasizing that she will have no one, not even Sue, if she cancels the subscription. He adds, once you stop, you can't go back. The voice uses this threat to keep Elizabeth subscribed to the substance. It's once in a lifetime, and once it's gone, she is never allowed to use it again, creating a feeling of scarcity. When she only has a rotten finger, she justifies to herself that things might improve as long as Sue adjusts her attitude. When Sue's attitude fails to adjust and she steals decades from Elizabeth, Elizabeth considers herself a write-off and justifies, hey, I'm too old to be valuable, maybe Sue can carry the torch as long as she adjusts her attitude. Elizabeth's growing fears are represented in subscriber 207, the nurse. Finding herself in a diner, Elizabeth is too scared to remove her gloves because of her elderly finger. She's agitated and shaking. An old man, 207, leans over her to say, "It's long, isn't it? 7 days? It feels a bit lonelier each time. It gets harder each time to remember that you still deserve to exist, are still worth something, still matter. Has she started eating away at you yet?" Elizabeth leaves, distraught. Sue's treatment of Elizabeth could represent elder abuse. When it's your turn to be the one on the bathroom floor, you fall into unconsciousness so severe that it looks like time doesn't pass for you. As we see from the way Elizabeth collapses in agony during Sue's creation, and then wakes up gasping with pain a week later, it appears as though it's a blink of an eye for participants. That whole time you're lying on the bathroom floor, naked and motionless. If Sue wants to exceed her 7-day allowance, she needs extra stabilizer. Taking extra stabilizer causes her to steal time from Elizabeth, causing parts of her body to age by years. When the 7-day food pack runs out, the IV starts to suck the air until the bag crunches into a vacuumed ball, and Elizabeth begins to gasp like she's suffocating. It's clear that Sue must only take extra time from Elizabeth in an absolute emergency, right? Obviously, she has to plan carefully around their switchover so as to minimize the risk of any harm coming to Elizabeth. Right? Right?
Don't eat too fast.
No. Sue and Elizabeth discover the destructive power of stealing time for the first time when Sue takes extra stabilizer fluid to shag some random guy she brought home from a night out. She swapped Elizabeth's literal life force for some random night of drinking and some crap hookup she never sees again. And we can see from the calendar scene that Sue is due to switch with her every Tuesday. What kind of night out is so unforgettable and unmissable that it has to be done on a Tuesday? When Sue returns from taking that extra stabilizer fluid, her sexual partner unzips her bodysuit and her guts fall out of the back. Obviously, this isn't a literal scene. He wouldn't have left a polite note in the morning if she had disintegrated in front of him, I'm sure, but rather it represents the can of worms nature of this moment. Sue has crossed the line in a small way. Consequences are reserved solely for Elizabeth, and now that she has seen this play out, Sue will take extra time whenever she feels like it. Sue's mere existence causes Elizabeth to fall into a depression, not only because she has replaced everything of value Elizabeth thought she possessed, but because she treats Elizabeth with reckless contempt. Elizabeth and Sue's relationship represents a binge-purge cycle eating disorder. Elizabeth's goodbye present from Harvey is a cookbook of French cuisine. "My wife swears by it," he tells her, grinning. "I love my wife." During one miserable night, Elizabeth scans the pages. We see recipes that feature cruel and controversial artificial ingredients like foie gras, which is made by force-feeding birds until their livers expand. I feel like this was intended to mirror the way that Elizabeth also feels like a cruel experiment, and Sue her expanded, inhumane liver. Elizabeth begins a voracious cooking hobby, as it's the only thing that she can do to lash out at Sue and maintain some control. What Elizabeth eats has a direct physical effect on Sue. After eating a cold, greasy roast chicken, Sue has a nightmare that the chicken manifests in her body. She's able to move it around to the front where she pulls it wholesale from her belly button, which then shrinks back on itself like a greasy little butthole. This grossness makes Sue feel self-conscious, which we see when she makes direct eye contact with the camera. She becomes self-aware. She suddenly doesn't feel comfortable at having all those eyes on her. Waking up with a scream, Sue sees Elizabeth's greasy smile. She's furious when she sees the mess left by Elizabeth on the table too, evidence of her binging. Sue's elevated status has corrupted her view of Elizabeth, who she now refuses to empathize with. Elizabeth becomes a shameful week of binge eating, and Sue becomes an angry week of purge, two equal and opposite forces fighting for control, born from self-hatred. Things come to a head when Sue mocks Elizabeth on television. Sue appears on the talk show. Amidst claiming humble roots and avoiding questions about beauty secrets, she is asked whether she was a fan of Lizzie Sparkle. Sue takes a moment to think about this. Elizabeth watches in silence, gripping a raw chicken like it's a weapon. She wants to hear Sue's response because it determines whether she proceeds.
Jurassic Fitness, really.
Jurassic Fitness.
And the crowd goes wild. Sue calls Elizabeth Jurassic Fitness, and her statement throws Elizabeth into a rage. Insisting that Sue wouldn't exist without her, Elizabeth cooks up a storm. She covers the windows with newspaper pages and liquid fat. She lashes out because she's angry that the substance has reduced her control, and she wants Sue to work with her, to like her, to do things for her, and it has an adverse effect because Sue makes the executive decision to lock her away. Sue uses Elizabeth as a helpless fluid farm for months on end, aging Elizabeth's body well into disfigurement. Only Elizabeth stops producing stabilizer fluid on the day of the New Year's Eve show. Sue is forced to switch or die. Upon waking and seeing what Sue has done to her, Elizabeth retaliates by deciding to end the service. She picks up a termination syringe from the pickup point. She begins the termination process but has second thoughts. Elizabeth is transfixed by Sue's face and she injects her. She looks at the flowers and lingers on the note which reads, "They'll love you." Wordlessly, she takes the syringe out, performing CPR to resuscitate Sue.
I need you. You're the only lovable part of me. You have to come back.
Sue wakes up. For the first time in the movie, they are concurrently awake. Elizabeth sees Sue as a goddess. Sue sees Elizabeth as a parasitic freak. Sue beats Elizabeth to death, throwing her against the portrait so that it shatters, representing Elizabeth's loss of self. Sue smashes Elizabeth's face against the mirror in the bathroom, representing the way she is now being forced to confront how her low self-esteem led her to this moment. Sue doesn't seem to realize that she is eradicating her source of stabilizer fluid until the moment after she has killed Elizabeth dead with her bare hands. Only then does she start to seem to feel sad. Spoilers ahead for Stephen King's Carrie. So after Sue kills her source of stabilizer fluid, she understands how it feels to be shorter on time than Elizabeth ever felt. She got 24 hours max. Once she's in the makeup chair, she notices something is wrong and rushes to the bathroom where her teeth begin to fall out. Well, the first one falls out and then she just starts pulling them out, hypnotized by the horror of her falling to pieces before her own eyes. She cries. She's not worried about her impending death. She's sad that this means she'll not be able to host the show that would have jettisoned her career into the stratosphere, regardless of whether that career has a future, since she definitely doesn't. Sue rushes back to the apartment. On the way, she encounters Harvey and his shareholder posse who force her to smile. "Pretty girls should always smile," he says, not noticing the terror in her tear-filled eyes. He doesn't see it, he doesn't care, it doesn't register. He and the white-haired crew are soon distracted by feathery showgirls. Like brainless seagulls, the men flock after them. Her ear falls off in the lift while a man is speaking to her. Sue covers her ears and cries. eyes, visibly having some kind of breakdown. She isn't listening to him. He also doesn't notice or care. It's Sue's turn to run home in shaky cam LA now, mirroring the rushes that Elizabeth would make when collecting the substance, grabbing the clearly labelled single-use only activator and loudly begging for a better version of herself. Sue injects it in a last-ditch effort to make it to the New Year's Eve show in one piece, and it doesn't work out. Sue's efforts result in the severely mutated Monstro Eliza Sue, a physically deformed and mentally disabled mishmash of her and Elizabeth, whose face is stuck on her back, mouth fastened painfully open. Eliza Sue doesn't possess the same hang-ups as her insecure mother and grandmother. Hearing "looks like everything's in the right place this time" in her head as she dresses herself, burns a few strands of greasy hair in an attempt to curl it, and begins filling holes in her head with earrings. Her breasts are out, poking through torn holes in her dress. In homage to Elizabeth, Eliza Sue cuts her face out of the portrait in the living room and wears it, applying a Joker-esque layer of lipstick. She staggers to the New Year's Eve show, seeing visions of people applauding her and telling her how irreplaceable she is. We see the sad reality, a silent, empty corridor with Sue's 2 posters on the wall, the premature end to her infant career. The soundtrack of 2001: A Space Odyssey plays as Eliza Sue gets on stage, where she promptly vomits up a boob on an umbilical cord and tries to speak to the horrified crowd, who begin screaming. She is shoved around, crying out, "It's me, it's me," before a man smashes her head off with a microphone. A moaning nest of heads bursts out of the hole where her neck was, and she sprays blood into the crowd. Rock music plays. Screaming, chaos and gore happens. Eliza Sue staggers out of the studio, collapses and explodes. What remains of Elizabeth, a little flesh octopus, crawls out from the mess, coming to rest on Elizabeth Sparkle's Walk of Fame star. She looks up into the sky, seeing glitter and lights and hearing cheering and applause, and dissolves into goop that is cleaned up the next day by street cleaners. So I've described this ending to you beat by beat because I am in 2 minds about it. I really personally don't like it. I've had it explained to me how I'm supposed to interpret it, what I'm supposed to take from it, and I can see the vision, but honestly I have not gelled with it at all. In the favourable interpretation, Eliza Sue represents the culmination of Elizabeth and Sue's behaviours and the mental breakdowns they both suffer when they find themselves no longer able to provide value for an uncaring world in exchange for fickle scraps of fame. Eliza Sue is a mishmash of them, an ugly mishmash, but an ugly mishmash who thinks that she is beautiful, faces herself readily in the mirror, and sings to herself as she gets ready for her big day. Eliza Sue represents how Elizabeth thinks she looks and how the world of Hollywood treats women of Elizabeth's age, but she doesn't care because she doesn't know. She thinks she looks how Elizabeth and Sue look. When she arrives at the New Year's Eve show, she is genuinely confused at the reaction of the crowd, and her spraying blood all over them is her way of lashing out against that rejection. Eliza Sue knows that she is deserving of love. She won't meekly walk away like Elizabeth did. She stands her ground and makes her protest. When she staggers away, she has sent her final message, made her point, and dies without a word. Elizabeth crawls over to the one thing that represents what made her happy in life and dies there too. Now, my interpretation. Eliza Sue is framed as a tragic figure, yes, because she represents the standards that Elizabeth and Sue held themselves to, but also because she is about to go on stage as a severely disabled person, mentally and physically, and get beaten to death for being ugly. Eliza Sue is, by the standards of Hollywood, very, very ugly, unspeakably ugly. Like, to them, she is can't be allowed to live levels of ugly. She is also totally deluded into thinking that everyone loves her. When she gets onto that stage, it is a rough watch. I think it could have still worked here, but personally I found the need for the movie to end in explosions of gore and screaming to be kind of too extreme to work. It's kind of like the ending of Carrie, but without sealing the deal. Unlike Carrie, who kills her bullying classmates with her psychic powers, Eliza Sue gets her revenge by harmlessly spraying the audience with blood as they scream, and then just leaves. Harvey will walk away and hire a new person to present Sparkle Your Life, or Pump It Up, or whatever he wants to call it next. No one in the audience understands who Eliza Sue is, or where she's come from, or what she's trying to say. As far as they know, she's just a severely disabled person who has walked onto the stage. Some poor minimum wage worker will have to mop up all the entrails, and life will go on. I can definitely appreciate an ending where an exploited woman lets loose her rage against a screaming audience of people, but this ending has no bite. It's all flash, it's just a hosepipe of blood. To me, it felt pretty ableist and mean-spirited to have Eliza Sue be severely deformed with the mental capacity of a child. The scene where she tries to curl her greasy hair and makes confused noises when she burns it off is obviously intended to be funny, and I don't really know why. The aspect of the ending that I did appreciate, however, was the way Elizabeth dragged herself to the star. I like the fact that she just didn't really learn anything. I don't think there needs to be a good ending to this movie, but Eliza Sue just felt like a way to punch down more so than actually criticize the structures of Hollywood in a meaningful capacity. She becomes a localized issue, some weird prank pulled at the New Year's Eve show to be forgotten about. Security will be tighter next year, because there will be a next year. Elizabeth is a great character because she is a tragic character. She has been molded by the Hollywood machine so badly that she can't see the forest for the trees anymore. She can't revolt against it because it's all she knows. Sue, able to capitalize on her looks, fully embraces the Hollywood machine and drains the life out of her victimized mother to do so. No regrets, no questions, no issues. Eliza Sue, their daughter, loves herself and tries regardless and is violently rejected so hard that she dies. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like she's just here for the blood hose. Overall, I think The Substance is probably 40 minutes too long. I don't want all my movies delivered to me in 90-second summaries, no, but despite being brimming with dense themes, this 2-hour 20-minute runtime felt like it dragged, and I felt like it stretched those themes a bit thin. There's a lot of fluff, some of which is visually great, and some of it just had me checking the time. The Substance does have substance, yes, but I feel like its very genre of choice undermines its ability to put a ribbon on them at the end and send them on their way. I never really feel like anything was, like, wrapped up, and I think that's to do with the genre of choice. Like, I love body horror, and I think it meshes well with the expectations of women, especially in Hollywood, but it's too easy to find yourself punching down on the victims of these expectations as their perpetrators just drift limply out of the narrative. The ending was genre suitable, but ultimately just not really to my tastes. Whatever point it was trying to make didn't gel with me, and I didn't respect the angle they went with either. But hey, this is a body horror. It needs to have an explosive crescendo of horrible body, and maybe I'm just not in the right state of mind to appreciate the liberal use of the blood hose.